On October 7, 2014, three friends met up at Mount Rugu in Taoyuan City, Taiwan, to fly their remote-controlled planes. However, their enjoyment was short-lived when one of them, Chen Zhiqiang, experienced trouble. His plane crashed twice in the same empty area on the mountaintop. Despite thorough inspection revealing no technical issues, Zhiqiang decided to continue flying. An hour later, when another friend named Liu Rongfu was carefully guiding his plane back, something strange occurred. Just as it flew over the area where Zhiqiang's plane had crashed, Rongfu's plane suddenly lost control and plummeted to the ground. Remarkably, this was the third crash in exactly the same spot within 1 hour. The three friends exchanged puzzled looks, believing such coincidences couldn't be mere chance. Suspecting possible interference from nearby devices, the group decided to investigate the crash site. They quickly found Rongfu's plane in a muddy hole overgrown with weeds. Fortunately, the device only suffered minor damage and could be repaired. After surveying the surroundings and finding nothing unusual, the group prepared to head down the mountain. At that moment, Rongfu noticed something strange in the muddy hole, what appeared to be an animal bone at first glance. Curious, he moved closer for a better look. When he realized it was a human leg bone surrounded by scattered brownish-yellow hair, Liu Rongfu froze in shock, his mouth agape and body trembling in horror. The other two quickly rushed over. They immediately felt a chill run down their spines. One of them took out his phone and called the police right away. At 3:30 p.m., a team of investigators from the Longtan Taoyuan Investigation Department quickly arrived at the scene. Among them was forensic expert Xiao Kaiping, a renowned figure in the field with numerous successful cases, and his assistant. With the composure of a seasoned professional, Xiao Kaiping slowly approached the exposed bones, his white-gloved hands moving cautiously and methodically. The investigation team worked diligently for 3 hours until darkness forced them to temporarily suspend the excavation. The uncovered portions revealed several significant findings. The victim's left leg bones, neck bones, and foot bones were found in the upper soil layer. Noting that the rest of the remains lay deeper in the ground, and wanting to preserve as much evidence as possible, the investigation team decided to continue their work the next day. That night, the Longtan police chief quickly implemented measures to secure the scene. Police tape was placed around the area where the body was discovered, and officers were assigned to guard the site overnight. Simultaneously, he announced the formation of Special Investigation Team 107 to focus on the case. The next morning, excavation work resumed. After 2 hours of meticulous work, the entire body was finally unearthed. During the dig, investigators made another significant discovery. Several pieces of women's clothing were found in the soil layer beneath the body. However, these garments had been severely degraded by time, with considerable color fading. Notably, there was a layer of soil separating the clothes from the skeleton, preventing investigators from immediately concluding they belonged to the same person. Beyond these mysterious clothes, the scene yielded no other clues to help identify the victim. By noon, the remains and clothing were transferred to Kaiping's laboratory in Taoyuan for his team's detailed examination. After 6 hours of thorough analysis, the forensics team provided preliminary conclusions. The skeleton measured 5 feet 1 inch, was found in a curled position, and had no clothing. Based on body proportions and the remaining 12-inch brownish-yellow hair on the skull, they identified the victim as female. The victim's mouth showed signs of dental work, including fillings and artificial teeth. Based on these characteristics, experts estimated the victim's age to be around 60. The body's pelvic and waist areas still retained some muscle tissue, while other limbs and internal organs had completely decomposed. From the state of decomposition, they estimated the time of death to be approximately 6 months prior. Regarding the cause of death, forensic expert Kaiping needed more time for determination. However, with years of experience and professional intuition, the investigators strongly suspected this was a case of murder with attempted concealment of the body. While the victim's identity remained unknown, Kaiping's meticulous examination revealed crucial findings. The victim had severe head trauma, damage to the occipital bone, and clear signs of hemorrhaging in the dura mater inside the skull. All these indicators confirmed the police's initial hypothesis. This was indeed a murder case, with the victim being brutally killed before being buried on scenic Mount Rug. The incident quickly made headlines with sensational titles like Murder and Burial, sending shockwaves through the community. Mount Rugu, once a popular tourist destination, suddenly became deserted as locals unanimously declared they would avoid the area. Following directives from superiors, the special investigation team recognized the urgent need to identify the victim. Unexpectedly, things seemed to progress quite smoothly. After checking missing persons records from the past 6 months, police narrowed down to a woman whose characteristics matched the case, Mrs. Lee, known as #1 female tycoon Yang Mei. After her husband's death, Mrs. Lee had inherited significant real estate assets valued at 10 million new Taiwan dollars, approximately $330,000. What drew public attention to Mrs. Lee was her relationship with a boyfriend more than a decade younger than her. The romance between the wealthy woman and the young man quickly became a hot topic of discussion throughout Taiwan. However, by late 2013, the couple suddenly broke up. Around the same time, information about Mrs. Lee's substantial debts began circulating, causing further public speculation. The tragedy didn't end there. In mid-April 2014, about 6 months before the body's discovery, Mrs. Lee suddenly vanished without a trace. Her phone was switched off and no one could contact her. By the end of April, her worried family reported her missing to the police, but the case fell silent with no further developments. When combining factors such as gender, age, height, and the timing of Mrs. Lee's disappearance and death, all matching the skeleton found on Mount Rugu, police believed such coincidences couldn't be mere chance. They tentatively identified the victim as Mrs. Lee and immediately contacted her family for body identification. The identification process faced numerous challenges due to the body's long burial period, making facial recognition impossible. The crime scene also left no personal belongings that could help identify the victim. This suddenly increased the difficulty of identification. Moreover, Mrs. Lee's children were certain that the clothes found at the scene didn't belong to their mother, as they completely differed from her style of dress. Thus, everyone's only hope now rested on DNA test results. Nevertheless, police still had reason to believe the victim was Mrs. Lieutenant. They held an important lead. Mrs. Lee's young boyfriend had also mysteriously disappeared in June 2014, just 2 months after her disappearance. Notably, rumors suggested that 1 million new Taiwan dollars, nearly $33,000 in savings, had been transferred from Mrs. Lee's account to her young boyfriend's account. While waiting for DNA results, police focused their investigation on Mrs. Lee's young boyfriend. Taiwan media quickly seized on the story with sensational keywords like wealthy woman, young boyfriend, murder and burial, continuously publishing stories with embellished, exaggerated details. Local residents seemed to forget their initial horror at discovering the white bones, replaced instead by speculation and fabrications that made the truth increasingly unclear and unpredictable. While police were confident the case was nearly solved, on the afternoon of October 12th, DNA test results reversed all previous theories. The skeletal remains were confirmed to be 100% not Mrs. Lee's. Furthermore, based on DNA analysis, the victim's age range was adjusted to between 35 and 60 years old. This result sent the case, which had seemed nearly solved, back to square one. Surprisingly, Mrs. Lee's boyfriend suddenly appeared at the police station, strongly proving his innocence. Meanwhile, the seemingly blameless media continued publishing articles about the inefficiency of the investigation, successfully creating public pressure that made the police even more tense. During this time, all eyes turned to the investigation team's next move, waiting to see where they would find their breakthrough. In this situation, forensic expert Kai Ping proposed a new theory. He recalled an important sign from the autopsy. The victim's teeth had been treated, particularly a relatively recent filling in the upper left jaw. From this, he posed a question. Could the victim's dental records still be preserved at any dental clinic? Typically, legitimate dental clinics maintain patient dental molds for future treatment purposes. Kai Ping's hypothesis received unanimous support from the expert team. On October 16th, police immediately took action, distributing thousands of search notices and widely broadcasting the victim's dental characteristics on television channels, hoping to find someone who could provide information. Simultaneously, the Special Investigation Team launched a large-scale dragnet investigation campaign. Investigators worked with over 100 hospitals and dental clinics across Hsinchu, Taoyuan, Taipei, and New Taipei areas. However, after more than 10 days of intensive searching, they had yet to achieve any significant results. Facing this situation, police began expanding their investigation scope, posing new hypotheses. Could the victim be a foreigner? Or had they possibly sought treatment at unofficial private clinics? If so, would this make tracking down leads even more difficult? The case seemed to have hit a dead end. But then a miracle occurred. During his day off, a police officer from the Special Investigation Team had a toothache and visited a clinic near his home, one in the area he had previously investigated. This officer had been to this clinic before, talking with the staff but finding no leads related to the case. While waiting for his turn, he witnessed a middle-aged man enter and engage in friendly conversation with the doctor at the reception desk. Through the conversation he overheard, the officer learned that this visitor was also a dentist working at a private clinic in the Luzhou area. To supplement his income, he frequently took additional cases in neighboring areas. Following his professional instinct, the officer immediately had an idea. He approached the dentist and showed him a photo of the victim's teeth on his phone. A surprising breakthrough occurred. With just a glance, the dentist recognized these as belonging to a patient he had treated. The police officer was stunned, not expecting his chance attempt would lead to such an important lead. Without hesitation, the dentist took the officer to his clinic. After searching through old medical records, he found the X-ray. The patient in the file was named Zeng Meilan. The police quickly brought the X-ray back to the laboratory for comparison. The results showed that the characteristics of missing and filled teeth perfectly matched those of the white skeleton found on Mount Rugu. They immediately contacted Meilan's family to conduct DNA testing. The final results confirmed the victim was Zeng Meilan. Investigation revealed that Meilan was 41 years old, married with 3 children, and worked in sales. According to family and friends, she had excellent business acumen and was the family's financial backbone. In contrast, her husband was just an ordinary employee with a modest salary. Within the family, Meilan was known for her strong and decisive personality, often controlling most family matters. However, to outsiders, she always presented herself as a friendly, sociable woman who was well liked by neighbors. However, according to neighbors, starting in 2013, Meilan began showing notable changes in her lifestyle. She started paying more attention to her appearance when going out, and many witnesses saw her frequently bringing different men home. As for her husband, he appeared rather weak when discovering he was being cheated on, but chose to remain silent, primarily due to his insecurity about earning less money than his wife. On August 2nd, 2014, Meilan suddenly disappeared. 9 days later, on August 11th, her husband finally reported it to the police. Notably, why had police overlooked Meilan's case when reviewing missing persons files? Later, police admitted this was an investigative oversight. The initial autopsy estimated the victim's age at around 60, causing Meilan's file, a 41-year-old woman, to be automatically excluded from the investigation list. Even after the age range was adjusted to between 35 and 60, police had forgotten to review previously excluded files. Who killed Meilan? Police began by reviewing security cameras near Mount Rugu's entrance during the period before and after her disappearance, but found no suspicious vehicles. They shifted their focus to investigating the victim's call history. A crucial discovery emerged. At 2:21 a.m. on August 2nd, Meilan had attempted to contact a phone number unsuccessfully. 10 minutes later, at 2:31 a.m., she called for a taxi. This was the last call recorded on her phone. Through verification with the telecommunications company, the number Meilan had called before ordering the taxi belonged to Huang Jianhe, a wealthy businessman in the Longtan area. Information from the taxi company showed Meilan's destination was a 4-story villa on Datong Road in Longtan. Notably, this villa's owner was also Jianhe. Police found the taxi driver from that night. According to his recollection, Meilan appeared to have been drinking heavily that night. Concerned for his passengers' safety, the driver had offered to wait but was refused. With these clues, Jianhe became a key figure in the case, as he was likely the last person to have contact with Meilan before her disappearance. The question arose, was he the perpetrator? And particularly, what was the true nature of the relationship between Huang Jianhe and Meilan? Huang Jianhe, 43, was married to Zhang Wenjuan and had 2 sons. Initially, he was just a cement truck driver, but later quit to open his own cement store. He not only had business acumen, but was also skilled at building relationships. As a result, his business flourished, and he became a wealthy entrepreneur. People often called him the Cement King. When questioned by police, Jianhe denied any involvement in the case. He claimed he had gone to bed early that night and hadn't received any calls from Meilan. Moreover, he insisted he had never hosted Meilan at his home and that their relationship was purely friendship. However, Jianhe's panicked demeanor made police more convinced he was lying. Through thorough investigation, they uncovered an illicit relationship between Jianhe and Meilan. Though both initially tried to keep it secret, everything gradually came to light over time. What was surprising was how those involved reacted. Meilan's husband chose to remain silent and endure, while Wenhuan, Jianhe's wife, merely gently advised her husband to think of their children and not go too far. Seeing both spouses taking a turn-a-blind-eye approach, the adulterous couple became increasingly bold, feeling they no longer needed to hide their secret relationship. The couple frequently appeared in public together. With his interest in charity work, Huang Jianhe often took Meilan to events. According to charity organization staff, Jianhe acted like Meilan's personal driver. They were always together, never trying to hide from anyone. People often saw Jianhe buying gifts for Meilan, and they even celebrated New Year's Eve together at the iconic Taipei 101 Tower. Particularly shocking was an incident where someone overheard Meilan telling her child to call Jianhe Dad. However, according to charity staff, about 6 months earlier, the couple suddenly stopped appearing together, and no one knew why. Although police suspected this was a crime of passion, they lacked direct evidence and couldn't obtain a warrant to search Jianhe's home. Another complication was that the crime had occurred nearly 3 months ago, and most private security cameras only store footage for 1 month. This meant using surveillance cameras to reconstruct the truth was practically impossible. Police felt powerless about this situation. But as the saying goes, those with a clear conscience fear no midnight knock, while those who have committed wrongs live in fear and naturally reveal flaws. On November 11th, police discovered Jianhe had applied for a visa to Nanning, Guangxi, claiming it was for business negotiations, but he was planning to travel with his entire family. This clearly indicated an attempt to flee. Faced with this urgent situation, police finally decided to act. They brought Jianhe in for questioning under the pretext of cooperating with the investigation, while simultaneously conducting a thorough search of his house. Technical specialists discovered several bloodstains that had been cleaned from the third-floor staircase railing and walls. After testing, these bloodstains were confirmed to belong to Meilan. From this, police determined this was likely the primary crime scene. Additionally, large blood traces were detected under the back seat of Jianhe's car. However, even when confronted with this evidence, he continued to adamantly deny killing Meilan. He admitted lying earlier, but insisted they had cut off contact long ago. He claimed the bloodstains on the floor might have been from when Meilan injured herself while drunk. The police were not easily convinced by Jianhe's explanation, so they decided to seek leads from his family members. Jianhe's 2 sons firmly denied any involvement in Meilan's death, but their decisive attitude seemed rehearsed. Meanwhile, Wenjuan, Jianhe's wife, claimed ignorance verbally, but her eyes betrayed signs of anxiety. Recognizing Wenjuan's vulnerability, police focused their investigation on her, and soon the truth began to emerge. Wenjuan confessed that on August 2nd, 2014, Meilan had come to their home, causing a disturbance. During an argument, Jianhe had struck Meilan until she lost consciousness. Afterward, he and his eldest son took her to Mount Rugu to kill and bury her. However, Wenhuan emphasized that Jianhe had initially intended to take Meilan to the hospital. Unexpectedly, during the drive, Meilan regained consciousness and engaged in a violent struggle with Jianhe, even threatening to take their entire family down with her. In that critical moment, Jianhe accidentally strangled her to death. Immediately after obtaining Wenjuan's statement, police moved to interrogate Jianhe's eldest son. Confronted with his mother's testimony, Huang Baiqiang finally dropped his resistance and admitted in detail how he had helped his father dispose of the victim's body. When police presented both mother and son statements to Jianhe, he completely broke down and confessed to the entire sequence of his crimes. According to Jianhe's confession, in November 2012, he and Meilan met at a parent-teacher meeting at school and exchanged contact information. Initially, they only discussed their children's education privately, but later developed feelings for each other and became lovers. Jianhe said he enjoyed being with Meilan, but never considered divorcing his wife. When Meilan suggested he divorce his wife, he firmly refused. During this period, they had many disagreements. By July 2014, Jianhe discovered that besides him, Zeng Meilan had two other lovers. Feeling deeply betrayed, he decided to end the relationship. But Meilan disagreed, trying every way to hold on to him, though Jianhe remained resolute in his decision to break up. In the early hours of August 2, 2014, Meilan had been drinking heavily. She called Jianhe, but when he didn't answer, she went directly to his house. At 2:51 a.m., Meilan got out of the taxi and went straight to the fourth floor of Jianhe's house, as she had a key. She took out the key and let herself in. At that time, Jianhe's eldest son Baiqiang was playing on his phone in his bedroom when he heard movement outside and thought it was a burglar. He grabbed a baseball bat, but when the door opened, he found a middle-aged woman who reeked of alcohol. Meilan asked Baiqiang where his father was, but Baiqiang confronted her about daring to break into someone's home at night. Their argument grew increasingly loud, waking Jianhe and Wenyuan, who were sleeping on the third floor. When Meilan saw Jianhe, she lost control of her emotions, frantically demanding to know why he was treating her this way. Jianhe angrily pushed Meilan and threatened that if she continued making noise, she would pay dearly. Meilan became enraged and lunged toward Wenjuan, who was standing nearby attempting to attack her. Seeing his mother being attacked, Baiqiang immediately rushed forward to pull Meilan away but was bitten hard on the arm. Jianhe ran to the kitchen, grabbed a fruit knife intending to stab Meilan, but Baiqiang managed to stop him in time. Jianhe then picked up the baseball bat from the floor and struck Meilan hard on the back of her neck. Meilan fell but appeared to still be conscious, mumbling that she wanted to go home. Wenjuan tried to call emergency services, but was stopped by Jianhe. After an argument, Jianhe finally agreed to take Meilan to the hospital, with his eldest son Baiqiang accompanying them. Wenjuan felt that Jianhe might do something extreme, and warned her son to remind his father to stay calm and not do anything reckless. At 3:22 a.m., Jianhe and his son carried Meilan to the family car. But just after they started driving, Meilan suddenly regained consciousness and began screaming hysterically, threatening to die together with Jianhe. Jianhe turned the car around and drove to an empty lot. He told his son Baiqiang to stay in the car while he dragged Meilan to a spot several dozen yards from the vehicle. From the car, Baiqiang witnessed his father kneeling down and strangling Meilan until she stopped moving. After confirming Meilan was dead, Jianhe called Baiqiang to help. Then, father and son carried the body into the car and drove to the burial site. Around 4 a.m., they arrived at Mount Rugu. Jianhe dug a shallow hole with his hands, first stripped all the clothes from Meilan's body, then buried the body in the hole, covering it with weeds to conceal it. Jianhe hurriedly took his son home and confessed everything to Wenhuan. After calming down, he felt the body disposal had been too hasty. At 7 a.m., father and son went out again, first stopping at a hardware store to buy a pick, then returning to the burial site. This time, Jianhe dug a hole about 16 inches deep and reburied the body. Afterward, they disposed of Meilan's clothes, the murder weapon, and the digging pick in various trash bins along the road, then thoroughly cleaned the car. At home, Wenhuan also cleaned up, carefully wiping away bloodstains from the staircase and handrail, trying to erase all traces of the crime. And so, that night, Meilan vanished forever from this world. In December 2014, prosecutors charged Huang Jianhe with murder. Zhang Wenjuan was also charged for helping him conceal the crime. Their son Huang Baiqiang, who participated in disposing and burying the body but was under 18, was ultimately transferred to juvenile court for trial. In the initial trial, Jianhe was sentenced to life imprisonment. However, during his incarceration, he displayed apparent remorse in public view, such as copying Buddhist scriptures daily. Based on this behavior, the appeals court modified his sentence from life imprisonment to 15 years and 8 months in prison, and ordered him to pay compensation of 7 million new Taiwan dollars, approximately $230,000, to the victim's family. As for Zhang Wenjuan, although she was suspected of concealing a crime, the court considered that she had not actively participated and had repeatedly urged Jianhe to take Meilan to the emergency room during the incident. Additionally, she was the first to reveal the truth to the police, which was considered an act of redemption. Therefore, the court dismissed the charges against her. As for Huang Jianhe's son, Huang Baiqiang, since he did not directly participate in the murder, the juvenile court ultimately decided to place him under protective supervision. The Rugu Mountain case is a painful reminder of how a toxic relationship can lead to tragedy. What started as a chance encounter at a parent-teacher conference turned into a destructive affair that ultimately not only claimed a life, but also tore apart the families involved. And next, we will explore a case that happened in 2021 in the state of California, USA. On the afternoon of April 5th, 2021, the air was filled with the fragrant aroma of charcoal and grilled meat at a Korean BBQ restaurant in Monterey Park, Los Angeles County, California. Diners were engaged in pleasant conversation, enjoying their relaxing dinner. However, no one could have predicted that this restaurant was about to become the scene of a horrific crime. Just after 6 p.m., a man of average build wearing a dark blue shirt entered the restaurant. His steps were steady, his gaze fixed intently on a distant corner. He carried a plain yellow paper bag that drew no particular attention. His face was expressionless, appearing no different from any ordinary customer coming in for dinner. Yet, hidden in the depths of his eyes was a strange coldness that inspired unease in those who noticed. Minutes earlier, a couple had just seated themselves in the corner of the restaurant. They were chatting animatedly, their cheerful laughter blending with the cozy atmosphere, completely unaware of the unusual events about to unfold. The man slowly approached them, his footsteps light as if counting each stride. When he was less than 6 feet from their table, he suddenly stopped. In a moment of suffocating silence, his hand slowly reached into the paper bag and pulled out a black handgun. The gesture was terrifyingly natural, as if he were simply retrieving an ordinary item. In the next instant, the restaurant exploded with deafening sounds. Without warning or hesitation, the gun in the man's hand fired repeatedly. Everything happened so quickly that time seemed to stand still. The restaurant immediately descended into chaos, with panicked screams echoing from all directions mingling with the sound of frantic footsteps. Amidst the chaos, the man stood like a statue, his emotionless eyes fixed on the lifeless body he had just shot. The Chinese woman who had been sitting at the table jumped up in panic, instinctively rushing toward the shooter in a futile attempt to prevent further tragedy. The man merely glanced at her, and with one decisive motion, violently pushed her to the floor. Without hesitation or doubt, he coldly aimed the gun at her. More sharp cracks tore through the air, and everything fell into a terrifying silence. The entire restaurant was now deathly quiet. The man slowly placed the gun back in the paper bag, standing still for a moment as he coldly surveyed the scene. After confirming there were no survivors, he calmly turned and left the restaurant. His steps were unhurried, as if he had just completed a routine task. During those terrifying moments, some brave diners secretly recorded footage of the killer leaving the scene and driving away into traffic. Within minutes, police sirens wailed as patrol cars arrived, quickly cordoning off the area. The video spread across social media like wildfire. This broad daylight massacre sent shockwaves through the community, especially among Chinese Americans, leaving behind haunting questions with no answers. What drove the killer to act with such brutality? What mysterious relationships existed between the perpetrator and these two unfortunate victims? Just 2 days after the incident, on April 7th, law enforcement apprehended the suspect at the U.S.-Mexico border as he attempted to flee. He was identified as Zeng 38 years old. Even more shocking was the revelation that the female victim was Wang Lingling, Yixin's wife, while the male victim was Li Jiaoming, a Chinese man who had developed an intimate relationship with Lingling. Through the restaurant's security camera footage, police discovered a crucial detail. On the day of the incident, Jiaoming had driven to pick up Lingling for dinner. The intimate relationship between Jiaoming and Lingling gradually came to light, likely the deep-rooted cause that led to this bloody tragedy. Yixin and Lingling were both born and raised in Jing County, Hebei Province, China. Yixin was a quiet, introverted man. After marrying and having 2 daughters in their hometown, he came alone to the United States in 2013, starting with grueling jobs in restaurants and construction sites. By 2015, after saving some money and obtaining a green card, he brought his wife and daughters over for a family reunion, hoping to build a new life in this foreign land. However, life as immigrants wasn't what he had envisioned. In America, Yixin had no relatives, few friends, and a limited social circle. During the pandemic, his employment became unstable, surviving mainly on part-time jobs. His life gradually centered around caring for his children, with almost all activities revolving around the family. A childhood friend of Yixin, who maintained contact after moving to America, shared that Yixin was normally not an impulsive person and had never been known to show any violent behavior toward his wife or children. Before the incident, this friend received a call from Yixin asking for help watching his 2 daughters. During the brief 1-minute call, Yixin mentioned wanting to return to China but hung up without explanation. After that call, the friend tried calling Yixin more than 10 times but couldn't reach him. According to the friend, before the shooting occurred, the 2 families would occasionally visit each other, with the friend's daughter even sleeping over at Yixin's house. The friend's family sometimes stayed overnight at Yixin's home, but throughout this time, they never noticed any signs that Yixin's marriage was in trouble. As for Lingling, she worked at a local massage parlor, working 6 days a week from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. For her, this job was a way to earn quick income. During the pandemic, due to financial pressures, Lingling became the main breadwinner of the family. Thus, in this household, Lingling took on the role of earning money outside, while Yixin stayed home, taking responsibility for caring for the family and their 2 daughters. During the investigation, the reasons for the breakdown of Yixin and Lingling's marriage gradually came to light. The couple had grown apart due to prolonged life pressures. According to their daughter's testimony, their mother hadn't shared a bedroom with their father for several months before the incident, even moving to sleep on the living room couch. On the day of the incident, while their father and younger sister were at home, a man referred to as uncle drove to pick up their mother. What was notable was that day, their mother had taken special care with her appearance, applying makeup meticulously, looking completely different from her usual casual appearance when going out with family. One can imagine how such behavior infuriated Yixin. Lingling seemed to make no attempt to hide her actions even in front of their daughters. This sight was like a dagger to Yixin's heart, something he couldn't bear. The long-suppressed anger finally exploded at that moment. This appeared to be the final straw for Yixin. After the incident, Yixin was arrested at the U.S.-Mexico border and immediately extradited to the Monterey Park Police Department for investigation. Police thoroughly searched his residence and discovered 6 firearms, including an assault rifle. Investigation revealed he not only had a concealed carry permit, but had also received weapons safety training and was very knowledgeable about gun mechanics and operation. On October 24, 2024, the case officially went to jury trial. To ensure fairness, the jury selection process was conducted with strict care. Both sides carefully screened potential jurors, finally selecting 12 official jurors and 3 alternates, with 8 being of Asian descent, ensuring jury diversity. On November 4th, the case entered its closing arguments phase. Yixin appeared in court wearing a dress shirt, maintaining a calm demeanor. With the assistance of the defense team and 3 Chinese interpreters, he followed the court proceedings through translation. When faced with 2 counts of murder, he pleaded not guilty. During the trial, both sides engaged in intense debates over the case details. The 2 sides painted very different pictures of the circumstances leading to this tragedy. The defense portrayed Yixin as an introverted, quiet, family-oriented man who devoted all his time and energy to his family, sharing most household duties with his 2 daughters. Meanwhile, they claimed Lingling frequently interacted with multiple men on social media and dismissed her husband's concerns and arguments. On her only day off, Lingling would carefully apply makeup, wear high heels and jewelry, and date other men, completely disregarding Yixin's existence. The defense attempted to frame the incident as a case of emotional loss of control rather than premeditated murder. The defense attorney emphasized that Yixin's long-accumulated anger exploded after witnessing his wife's intimate behavior with her lover, leading to a serious crime committed in the heat of passion. The defense strategy aimed to argue for a second-degree murder charge, attempting to reduce Yixin's punishment. In court, the defense revealed that Yixin had recorded videos after the incident, showing deep remorse and self-blame. In a video message to his wife, he said, "If you're still alive, please take good care of our daughters," as if still hoping she might have survived. In his message to his daughters, he said, "Everything is Dad's fault," indicating suicidal tendencies and showing he wasn't thinking rationally at the time. His words were full of contradictions, as if he still longed for an intact family while knowing he had destroyed it. The defense argued that Yixin, after countless sacrifices for his family, had been betrayed and finally lost control in extreme anger, leading to this tragedy. The prosecution presented evidence including the weapons, surveillance footage of the incident, and autopsy photos to prove Yixin's actions were cold-blooded and premeditated. In their closing argument, the deputy district attorney pointed out that Yixin's actions weren't a crime of passion, but stemmed from selfishness and possessiveness, refusing to allow his wife to start a new life. The deputy DA also stated that this couple's marriage had long been broken. The fact that Lingling moved to sleep on the living room couch showed she had completely emotionally distanced herself from Yixin. Due to pandemic restrictions and financial conditions, they continued living together, but at 36, Lingling was financially independent and had the right to pursue her own life. Her dependence on the family gradually decreased, the marriage gap widened, but Yixin couldn't accept this reality. The prosecution revealed that Yixin and Lingling had seriously discussed divorce, even asking their daughters who they would prefer to live with after the divorce. Prosecutors argued that Lingling's careful appearance on the day of the incident was simply an expression of moving on from an old relationship and preparing for a new life. However, in Yixin's eyes, this was an unacceptable betrayal. About a month before the incident, he had sent threatening messages to Lingling, saying, "Your adultery will surely face karma." This warning suggested he may have long been dissatisfied with the relationship between his wife and Zhao Ming and had developed murderous intentions. Details from the day of the incident further convinced prosecutors that Yixin's actions were premeditated. The prosecution pointed out that his circling of the restaurant wasn't due to anger, but rather he was acting like a predator, seeking the right moment to strike. Moreover, his decision to park on the street rather than in the restaurant's parking lot suggested he had prepared an escape plan. During the shooting, he targeted Zhao Ming first, with each shot aimed at vital areas. The purpose wasn't just revenge, but to make his wife witness this brutal punishment, further proving he had no intention of letting either victim survive. The prosecution's evidence included the 6 firearms Yixin owned, including an assault rifle. However, for the crime, he chose a modified black handgun, possibly because this unregistered weapon would be harder to trace. Yixin was not only knowledgeable about firearms, but had also taught his daughters how to use the home safe containing money and valuables. These arrangements seemed highly unusual. The prosecution concluded that all this evidence showed Yixin's actions weren't an emotional outburst, but a coldly planned double murder. He couldn't bear his wife starting a new life with someone else, nor could he accept that his daughters might leave him due to the failing marriage and follow their mother. Therefore, he chose an extreme way to prevent all of this from happening. On November 1st, 2024, the jury found Yixin guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder for killing both Lingling and Zhaoming. Under California law, first-degree murder typically carries a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Given the severity of the crime and the jury's verdict, Yixin likely faces life in prison. Yixin and Lingling once carried shared hopes when they left their homeland for the unfamiliar United States. However, under the pressures of life, they gradually grew apart, and their marriage was ultimately pushed beyond the point of no return. These fractures didn't form overnight, but were the gradual accumulation of family relationship issues and cultural adaptation challenges in immigrant life. Similar emotional difficulties and marital breakdowns can find empathy in many other immigrant families. Next is a case that occurred in 2017 in Toronto, Canada. At 1:30 a.m. on February 7, 2017, Toronto police received an urgent call about a violent altercation at an apartment in the city. When the patrol unit arrived at the scene, they found 2 Chinese international students had been involved in a serious fight. One was unconscious with severe head injuries and was rushed to a nearby hospital. The other student and a female student involved were taken into police custody for questioning. By 1 a.m. the next day, devastating news came from the hospital. Despite the doctor's best efforts, the victim had not survived. The sudden death of a young student sent shockwaves through Toronto's international student community. The case drew particular media attention as all parties involved were Chinese international students, with even China's state broadcaster CCTV providing detailed coverage of the tragedy. What led these 2 19-year-old Chinese students to such a violent confrontation? What was the relationship between the detained male and female students? And what truths did the student community reveal about the incident? This heartbreaking case began with a romance 2 years earlier, involving the victim, Wang Haoji. Wang Haoji was a young man from Henan, China, who was sent by his parents to study in Canada in January 2015 after completing high school. He began studying at the Canada-UK International Language Centre, where students typically complete language training before transferring to local schools. Standing 6 feet 4 inches with handsome features, Haoji was an outgoing and friendly person. However, in his early days abroad, language barriers meant he primarily socialized with other international students in similar situations. Fate intervened one day in August 2015 when Haoji visited a karaoke bar in Toronto with friends. There, he met Tan Jiaqi, a female international student from Shantou, Guangdong. Though it was their first meeting, they connected immediately through engaging conversation, and soon after, they began dating. Haoji deeply valued this relationship, showing his affection through generous gifts, from diamond rings and expensive necklaces to designer bags and shoes. He spared no expense to make Jiaqi happy. However, contrary to his lavish spending, Haoji's family wasn't particularly wealthy. His parents ran an import-export business back in China and also had to support his younger brother. While Haoji initially lived frugally in Canada, after meeting Jiaqi, he began lying to his parents, asking for money under the pretense of needing tuition fees. In less than 2 years of dating, he had spent around 100,000 Canadian dollars, while making no progress in his language studies. Jiaqi, the girl who captivated Haoji, made slow progress in English during her 2 years in Canada. At 19, she was still studying 11th grade English at Madonna International Academy, where most students and even some teachers spoke Chinese. She stood out among her peers, attending classes only twice a week but always arriving in elaborate, eye-catching outfits. Though they attended different language schools, classmates often saw Haoji accompanying Jiaqi to school. He lived frugally in all other aspects, spending money only on gifts and transportation for his girlfriend, all for the sake of her smile. But he never imagined that someone's appearance would capsize his love boat. This person was Fan Boqiao from Huizhou, Guangdong, who had been in Canada for about 6 years and had attended Madonna Private High School in Toronto, making him Jiaqi's schoolmate. He had completed 12th grade in Ontario. Athletic and fond of boxing, he frequently showed off his muscular physique on social media. He was meticulous about his appearance, always wearing sharp suits and carrying a briefcase to school. Classmates had mixed opinions about him. Some praised his helpfulness with computer issues, while others warned about his hot temper and boxing background, suggesting he wasn't someone to cross. 2 months before the incident, Boqiao and Jiaqi met at an event and began appearing together frequently at social gatherings. Boqiao lavished attention on Jiaqi, often requesting money from his family under the guise of tutoring fees to buy her designer bags and clothes. The exact timing of when Jiaqi switched her affections from Haoji to Boqiao remained unclear to many friends. According to peers who knew all three, the relationships were ambiguous. Haoji's friends claimed the couple hadn't officially broken up, while Jiaqi's friends insisted they had. This ambiguous love triangle ultimately became the spark that ignited tragedy. After discovering he had been betrayed, Haoji repeatedly sent messages reproaching Jiaqi for changing her heart upon meeting someone new and requested to meet her new love interest, Boqiao, to talk. On February 6, 2017, Jiaqi and Boqiao went to Haoji's home. When the two men met, tempers immediately flared, leading to a heated argument and physical altercation. At the urging of Haoji's roommate Eric, Jiaqi and Boqiao temporarily left. However, their anger only intensified after leaving. Because Jiaqi had previously lived with Haoji and knew the house's layout, she told Boqiao they could enter through the basement to ambush and teach Haoji a lesson. At that moment, Haoji was lying on the sofa playing with his phone, completely unaware when Boqiao suddenly struck him hard in the head with his fist. The sounds of the fight alerted Eric in the basement. He rushed upstairs to find Boqiao straddling Haoji, his right leg pressing against Haoji's neck and chest while shouting profanities. By then, Haoji was defenseless, covering his head with both hands on the sofa, while Boqiao landed at least 3 or 4 more blows to his head. Eric ran up and pulled Boqiao off from behind. When restrained, Boqiao pointed at Haoji curled up on the sofa and said, "Do you know who I am?" By this point, Haoji had lost consciousness. Eric and another roommate decided to take him to the hospital. However, Jiaqi, who was present at the scene, repeatedly prevented them from calling an ambulance, forcing the roommates to resort to calling a taxi instead. By then, Haoji had suffered severe brain trauma, and while he might have had a chance of survival, this delay in getting emergency medical care proved fatal. The next day, the hospital announced that Haoji had died due to a ruptured cerebral blood vessel and severe head trauma. A life was cut short at just 19 years old. After arresting Boqiao, police placed him in jail. Jiaqi was suspected of instigating the assault, but the prosecutor stated that due to lack of supporting evidence, they had to return her Chinese passport. This meant Jiaqi could leave Canada at any time. Under Canadian criminal law, unpremeditated homicide is prosecuted as second-degree murder, carrying a sentence of 10 to 25 years without parole. The exact length of the non-parole period varies by case and is determined by the judge in the final ruling. However, this case took a shocking turn. The appearance of a key figure led to an unexpected and almost unbelievable outcome in court. This crucial figure was Brian Greenspan, a renowned Toronto lawyer hired by Boqiao's family. Greenspan not only charged thousands of Canadian dollars per hour, but was also known for defending many high-profile cases. In local legal circles, he was known as a cunning character skilled at turning black into white. Understanding Greenspan's exceptional defense tactics, Boqiao's parents immediately invested heavily in securing his services after their son's arrest. Rumors circulated that Boqiao's father was a high-ranking bank executive in a Chinese province. What is known for certain is that 3 months after the incident, under Greenspan's defense, Boqiao successfully secured bail after 5 court hearings, with a bail amount of 3.75 million Canadian dollars, and was permitted to continue his studies. He then lived with his mother and 2 guarantors in a mansion worth over 2 million Canadian dollars in Markham, Canada, attending school while awaiting his new trial. On October 30th, 2019, after 2 years and 9 months, the murder case of Chinese student Wang Haoji finally reached its final trial. The courtroom was packed with Chinese people. Some were friends of the defendant Bo Qiao, others were friends and family of the victim Haoji. Many Toronto reporters were present to cover the trial. The judge had specially arranged for Mandarin interpreters. The previous day's cross-examination and the closing arguments from both prosecution and defense had concluded. Because the testimonies of defendant Bo Qiao and Eric, Haoji's roommate and key witness, conflicted, the jury needed to determine which account was more credible. This made October 30th a crucial turning point in the case. Bo Qiao's version claimed that Haoji had repeatedly insulted his girlfriend Jiaqi, and he accompanied her to Haoji's house fearing they might fight if she went alone. He said it was their first meeting, and the fight was unexpected. After being persuaded to leave, he claimed they returned only because he had accidentally left his car keys and cigar at Haoji's house. According to Bo Qiao, when Eric opened the garage door, he apologized to Eric for the earlier fight that had made a mess of the house. Eric then let them in. Bo Qiao went alone from the basement to the first floor, where he found Haoji lying on the sofa playing games. When Haoji saw Bo Qiao, he immediately stood up and demanded, "How did you get into my house?" Bo Qiao claimed he heard Haoji say something but couldn't hear clearly, so he leaned in closer to listen. That's when, according to Bo Qiao, Haoji grabbed his hair and pushed him onto the sofa. Bo Qiao said he only struck Haoji's head and face 2 or 3 times to free himself from Haoji's grip before others separated them. However, Eric, Haoji's roommate and one of the case's most important witnesses, described the fight very differently. The judge quoted Eric's testimony. Bo Qiao had removed his jacket before the fight and made vicious threats about killing Haoji. Eric heard commotion from the basement, rushed upstairs, and witnessed Bo Qiao straddling Haoji and beating him. The prosecution had another witness, Simon, Haoji's friend from Fairmont. According to Simon's testimony, he was on the phone with Haoji when the fight broke out. Simon said he heard a man shouting either "Come on, I'll kill you" or "Go ahead, beat me to death," though he couldn't be certain which phrase it was. Regarding these 2 contradictory phrases Simon heard over the phone, defense lawyer Greenspan and the prosecutor offered different interpretations. Greenspan argued that "Come on, I'll kill you" was what Simon actually heard, suggesting it demonstrated Haoji's jealousy and hatred toward Bo Qiao over Jiaqi's change of heart, wanting to attack Bo Qiao out of anger. The prosecutor, however, maintained that "Go ahead, beat me to death" was the actual statement, representing Haoji's desperate cry while being beaten by Bo Qiao. However, both of Haoji's roommates hadn't clearly heard either phrase. The authenticity of these statements was left for the jury to analyze and decide. If the jury believed Haoji made no threats to Bo Qiao and Bo Qiao was the aggressor, this would satisfy one of the conditions for second-degree murder. But if the jury believed Haoji attacked first and Bo Qiao fought back in self-defense, then it would be considered legitimate self-defense. The judge also pointed out that this case was particularly complex because there were 2 physical altercations between Bo Qiao and Haoji, separated by about 20 minutes. After the first fight, aside from some neck pain, Haoji's behavior remained normal. The cause of Haoji's death was a ruptured neck artery leading to severe cerebral hemorrhage. After deliberation, the jury reached their final verdict. Bo Qiao was guilty of manslaughter. The verdict suggested that the jury neither fully believed Bo Qiao's claim of self-defense nor fully accepted the prosecution's argument that Bo Qiao intentionally meant to kill Haoji. Bo Qiao was sentenced to just 5 years in prison. The judge stated in court that while Bo Qiao had hoped to continue his studies in Canada after serving his sentence, this plan would no longer be possible. As a convicted criminal, his university would no longer accept such a dangerous student, and upon parole, he would be immediately deported back to China. When local media reported Bo Qiao's sentence, it immediately sparked public discussion online. Some commented that Bo Qiao's lawyer was truly skilled. With a 5-year sentence, he could apply for parole after serving just 1/3, about a year, and considering time already served, he could be released very soon. On the victim's side, Haoji's mother broke down crying in court, saying the verdict was unfair and unacceptable. The case's outcome not only shocked people, but also sparked heated debate within the international student community. Haoji's younger brother revealed that since the incident, Boqiao's family had never once apologized. In court, Boqiao stated that he had always wanted to apologize to Haoji's family, but was prevented by his lawyer due to legal procedures. He said he would be haunted by this incident for the rest of his life. This case serves as a profound warning for young students studying abroad. Life in a foreign land offers not only opportunities and dreams, but also challenges and temptations. Don't let momentary, impulsive decisions destroy a bright future that took years to build. And those are our 3 cases for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.